You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk radio.
Reaching all the way back to 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition. Here is your host of Fate Radio, Kat Hobson.
It's Wednesday night, time for the Paranormal Experience radio show with host Kat Hobson. Kick back, relax, and get ready to learn. Welcome to the show. Now, here's Kat.
Good evening and welcome to Paranormal Experience Radio. I am Kat Hobson, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. This is going to be a fantastic show. I am looking forward to having a discussion with Dr. Rita Louise. I am fascinated by her books. In fact, I was just telling her before the show that I have gone down the rabbit hole doing my research on this so many times. The actual subject matter that she covers is mesmerizing. She discusses ancient history. She discusses human origins. She discusses spirits and attached entities and the power within. Her books are astounding. They cover the Nephilim and the reptilian agenda. Her newest book, Stepping Out of Eden, will give you pause. Truly it will. She is just absolutely fantastic. And I feel like a kindred spirit is showing up here to have a conversation with me. And yeah, I just want to let everyone know that I'm very well aware of what's been going on in the news. I want to, continue our prayers for the people that are affected by Michael. I want to offer prayers for healing in our nation because we're beyond the point of ludicrous and ridiculous behaviors, and it's everybody. So let's fix that because you know what? It starts with you. You be who you think you should be the change you want to see, and it just goes rippling out across the whole spectrum, and we can bring positivity back. It is up to each individual, and we can do this. We are those people. Everybody is those people. And I just want to go ahead and bring in Dr. Rita.
Hey, Kat. Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, thanks for being had. I'm glad you're here. I have been enjoying your research and your work and your shows and your appearances so much. You're a busy woman.
I try to keep out of trouble. But yes, never a dull moment around my house. Huh?
That's not as easy as one would think all the time.
No. I just found a t-shirt that says, I don't go looking for trouble, but somehow it always finds me.
That's an excellent shirt.
That's why I had to buy it.
Oh, yes, I would have done that. I saw one at a paranormal investigation we did this weekend. A friend wore to it, and it said, it was a dinosaur, and it was just, don't you hate it when your mind just goes kaput?
Mm-hmm. I do. It's like, well, ask me in a few minutes, maybe.
Yeah, it'll come back. I'm old. It loses its place in the file cabinet sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you've got your new book, Stepping Out of Eden, going on, which in it you referenced a lot to man-made. I'm just, you cover so many various topics on subjects that fascinate me that are you good with just free flow?
I am totally good with free flow. I will go anywhere you need me to go.
Okay. Well, in any place that you decide you want to as well.
Okay.
Because I'm just, this is about you. This is you're the guest. And I like the fact that you do the videos as well.
Well, one of the things that I have found is that people don't read that much anymore, or you have to kind of entice them in a little bit. And I find that the videos, they're short, they're sweet, they have a message, and they're educational.
Yes. And do you find that people who watch those tend to go get the books?
I haven't necessarily found a direct correlation. I mean, I cover, I talk about a lot of different topics, ancient mysteries, mythology, ancient aliens, ghosts, and health and healing. I mean, and intuition. I mean, so it's like I cover a lot of areas. And where I have found, I've done a series of videos on entity attachments. And so I've found more of a correlation in that area more than the ancient mysteries area. But, I'm always still hopeful. And, I have found that I have this very creative bug within me. And if I'm not writing something or producing a video, or I've been remodeling a historic home, if I'm not doing something with some creative piece to it, I get really bored.
Right? I cannot stand to sit and do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not once my coffee kicks in anyway. And that is the truth. That's just the way I roll. But it is good because one of my dogs has thyroid disease and he has to take medication. So by the time that he has his hour pass, my coffee's kicked in and we have a big day. So It works out great. I am curious as to what drew you into these studies, because these are not something that the average bear runs across.
Well, I mean, so here's my story. So growing up, we had to read books for our allowance. And so my first love in life was archaeology and anthropology. And so, all right, I went to Catholic school and we had to do a paper of what we wanted to do, like for our senior project in 8th grade. And I wanted to be an archaeologist. And so by that time, I was very well versed in the theory of evolution. And, I would, as an adult, got to go to the La Brea tar pit that I thought would be out in the middle of nowhere. And it turned out to be in downtown LA, and then I had to go.
Shock, right? Yeah.
But then I had to go because it was like, oh my God, it's La Brea tar pit. I mean, because I had read about it and all these finds there for all of these years. So that went on till I was in like 7th grade. And then I got turned on to the concept of ESP, extrasensory perception, better known as psychic stuff today. Right. And kind of moved in the library from the archaeology and anthropology department to the ESP department, which wasn't very big. And it was right next to witchcraft, which I couldn't touch because I went to Catholic school. Exactly. And it was witchcraft. And, and then, as time moved on, I, started reading self-help books and Be Here Now and Shakti Gawan and, like all of these people. And, just really stayed in that psychic, metaphysical area. Studied at the Berkeley Psychic Institute, and finished up there, got a certification as a Reiki master, studied hypnotherapy, which I discovered that's not my thing.
It's not everybody's. That's a very varied topic.
And was doing readings and was doing a lot of energy work with people, found out that one of the gifts, because people that have psychic abilities, we don't all tap into the same thing. Like I'm not a medium. I don't talk to dead people. I'm really not interested in talking to dead people. If someone has a specific question in the course of a reading, I don't have an issue tuning into that. I do spirit release work, so I guess that is kind of dead people. But that's not, to sit there and, talk to grandma, not my thing. But my thing is talking about people's health and wellness and what's going on in their body. For some reason, that just comes to me just so easily. So ended up going back to school and getting a degree as a naturopath, which is a holistic physician, and then a PhD in natural health counseling. So then I was doing that work for, actually a very long time. And, the whole ancient alien concept came up again. I mean, because Eric von Däniken and, people like that were writing in the 70s, 60s and 70s, which I read that material too. But it was coming back to the forefront. And, through a number of unfolding events, I kind of got back into it. And it was so cool because I got back to really my first love in life, which was, like archaeology and anthropology. And I have a minor in art history, an undeclared minor in art history, So, I mean, there's always been this love of anything really old and a fascination with it. And so I feel like when I approach some of this stuff, it's looking at it from, like the human point of view and just looking at things that make sense and why would we do that and what's our story, what do we have in this whole thing, and just really trying to answer my own questions,
Well,
because you've
done a pretty good job of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You give me more questions, but that's okay. But when I was reading Stepping Out of Eden, it was almost just like well, here's this. Well, I'll be. I did not anticipate that being in the pages of this book. And I'm going to be honest, I have not finished it because I have been taking my time. I've been taking notes as I go because I'm a weirdo like that. But it's just fascinating to me. And when I'm finished a topic, I'm like, I wonder if that is covered over here. So I go to your next book that I have. And I've just been kind of, like I said, rabbit holes. I've been down so many rabbit holes. But I think that's a great thing because that's how I learn. I think a lot of people do that. But
and that's how I write. I'll start with a question or a question that I feel needs to be answered in the progress of unraveling this mystery, and then it's like I just start going and going and going and going until it's kind of like, I get the message that it's time to stop, I guess, or I've unraveled everything and then, try to put it together. One of the comments that I have gotten from a lot of people is, with the man-made. So I have a book, Man-Made, The Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods, that was picked up by Red Wheel Weiser, which was released as E.T. Chronicles, What Myth and Legend Has to Say About Human Origin. So if I say Man-Made or E.T. Chronicles, it's the same book. So if anyone's interested in getting a book, you don't need to buy both of them because they are one and the same. And I just like to make that clear. But but the commentary that I get is they read my books and it makes their head spin because they're not really big and they're not written from a very scientific and academic point of view. But there's a ton of information that gets covered in them. And it just makes you question. I mean, because, I'll write all this stuff and, I get to the end of the road, and there may be an answer, there may not be an answer. And when we're talking about our past, when we're talking about our deep history and who we are and where we came from, there aren't any answers. There's just the evidence that we can find and then speculations that we can make from it. So there are a lot of people that are like, well, the pyramids were built because of this, or this, dolmen were burial chambers, and they just make these statements of fact when the truth is it's not fact, it's speculation. And I try to be really clear, when I'm writing that, well, this is my thought.
Right.
Yes. But not necessarily this is a fact because we don't know the facts. But what makes sense, if you take this body of evidence and look at it with an open mind and a discerning brain, there's only so many conclusions that you can come to, in my opinion.
I agree with that opinion. That's one of the things that I found when I was reading your work. You were referred to me as someone I would be interested in reading and probably talking to by my friend Tom Conwell, who is a UFO.
I had lunch with Tom Conwell on this past Thursday.
Oh, you lucky person. Isn't he wonderful?
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy him greatly. He is one of my favorite people.
He's a great guy.
He is a great guy. And just a great person.
Mm-hmm. And has incredible research. So
oh my goodness.
It's all good.
It is all good. When I first started talking to him, it was about, I guess, 3 years ago, right around in there. And we've had a chance to meet because it's rare for me to get to meet my friends from New York, unless it's somewhere in the middle. But he is just the consummate detail person. He does a fantastic job with his research.
Mm-hmm.
But when he told me that I would just enjoy you so much, I was like, well, I'll look her up. And I started reading, and I was like, oh my gosh, where is this woman? I've got to go find her. So,
well, I was just in New York, which is where I met up with Tom.
What were you doing up there?
Visiting family.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't have family up there anymore. My daughter moved to Denver, which is also a nice place to visit.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I just am so fascinated by this topic. One of my people that follow me said, "You're doing a lot of ufology things. Aren't you a ghost hunter?" And I said, "I'm a paranormal researcher." There's a difference because all of these things are paranormal. They are outside the realm of the everyday, and they are paranormal. That was a funny look on that face.
And one of the things that I'm finding is that it really is all connected.
Yes.
I have 2 books that are on health and healing, but more about subtle energy and energy medicine and energy movement. And then the ghost book, and then the 2, the E.T. Chronicles and the new book, Stepping Out of Eden. And it would be very easy for me to sit there. I mean, the ghost book totally can fit into the Stepping Out of Eden book because, when you talk about antiquity, one of the things that ancient and indigenous cultures believe in is spirit, and how spirits can plague you and create havoc in your life and can, create blessings at the same time. And it's just interesting that we have this concept about ghosts that, it's kind of a new phenomena when it's not. It's
At all.
ancient,
Yes.
ancient.
You know what? I'm going to have to stop you right here because we're up against our first break, which is 3 minutes. So this is going so fast. I can't believe it. I knew this would happen. But we will be back in 3 minutes. Y'all be sure and come back with us.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
Hi, welcome back. We are Paranormal Experience Radio. I have my guest here, Dr. Rita Louise, and we were discussing all the things. When I was reading in Stepping Out of Eden, the part referencing the different religions all having the same viewpoints until certain levels, but basically they all have a creator. Someone came and made everything. Definitely all of us.
Mm-hmm.
I found that interesting because there's so many people that will argue that, and when the discussion comes around to aliens, then the question evolves into, well, they can't be real because the Bible says that we're it. I was like, really? Wouldn't it be interesting if all these exoplanets had their own creation story in their own Bible? And we couldn't possibly be. And that usually dries things up.
And I would think that if there was a planet out there that had an evolving community like there is on our planet, that they would go through a similar phase. And if they had a similar narrative base, but I'm going to kind of go in a different direction. It always makes me laugh and I don't mean this to be offensive to anyone. However, and no mean cards or letters on this one, but that I like prefacing, and I'm going to say something just kind of hard and blunt, that they have this feeling that the Bible is the only book out there, and our whole life and our whole narrative of the universe came out of that book. But there is so much material out there that come from other cultures, other religions, other societies that talk about our creation, that talk about who we are and where we came from, that it's insulting to all of them to say, well, you believe in these like fake invisible gods, and we believe in a fake invisible God, but we're not going to say that. And ours is okay and yours is not. I mean, I just find it insulting. But anyway, but if you stop and step outside of the Bible and look at creation from a broader perspective, when looking at as many cultures as you can find a narrative for, you find out that we really exist with a global narrative. You find the same stories on every continent on the planet up until a certain point in time, and in that narrative, it changes after the flood story. So the Noah flood story of the Bible, the narrative changes. But if you look at what are considered creation myths, they're basically all the same. And the Bible has many of the same stories, although, to be honest, very much truncated than what you find in other cultures and in other societies.
Absolutely.
But
aren't there only two religions that don't have creation stories?
I guess if you're an atheist or an agnostic, and I'm not really sure, how they think we got here. I mean, they don't believe in God, or one of them believes in God, but I don't know. But I mean, as far as anybody after that, they all have them, unless they chose to let them, go to the side. And I kind of use the Giorgio Tsoukalos line, with the big G and the little g, and the big G is the God who created, and I'm using the word create, and it's probably not the best word to use, that underscores the universe, and is the reason that we and the plants and the trees and the other planets and the other galaxies and solar systems exist today. Now, who that is, what that is, how that works, I have no idea. I don't try to answer that question. And I don't think many cosmologies try to answer that question other than recognizing that there is something bigger and grander than them that underscores everything that we see around us. And then there's the gods that we find in mythology and we find in the Bible. And those two individuals are not the same thing. Those two dynamics are really not the same thing. Other than maybe in Genesis 1 where the earth is created and the trees and the plants, but actually, no, I'm even going to take that back. So, no, not even that. Not even that, because I could talk about that. And
I
so,
read some of that.
And so, and the, people are like, well, how can you say that? So when I think about God, the big G God, our viewpoint is that this person, energy, dynamic, whatever, is omnipotent. It can create at will. And so when I think of that concept, what I think of is, are you a Trekkie at all?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so I think of Q from The
Yes.
Next Generation. Q could snap his fingers and a mariachi band would appear on the bridge of the Enterprise, or he could wave his hand and, a galaxy would just...
There it is. Yes.
come into existence, or the Enterprise would be hurled light years off into space. Now that's omnipotent.
Yes, it is.
That is omnipotent.
That is my
but
favorite character other than Jean-Luc Picard of any of the new Star Treks.
Yeah, he is totally my favorite character. But when we read the stories from myth or even from myth, because we don't find this narrative per se in biblical stories, is God gets around on a fiery chariot or on a horse-drawn chariot or on a silver shield, or on a Vimana. God can't just snap his fingers and make all of his enemies go away. He has to have weapons that are made by this other group of gods, that they can use to vanquish them.
Pretty astounding weaponry.
It's pretty astounding weaponry. And if we look at it from a contemporary point of view, we can kind of understand the weaponry, although we haven't necessarily recreated it, because we don't really know exactly what it is. But I think if we knew what it was, we could probably recreate it today. But if you're omnipotent, why do you need a weapon? Why do you need a chariot? Why do you need a device to transform your appearance? I mean, you wouldn't need that.
Absolutely
because
not.
You're omnipotent. But that's not, and so all of the gods we find in these stories, act more human-like. But then there's the next line that you usually get is, but people made them up. And it's like, I can't imagine individuals that maybe their best piece of technology is a bow and an arrow. And that's kind of maybe because bows and arrows didn't come into use until about 14,000 BC. And I think these stories greatly precede that.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Where would they come up with these concepts of these flying machines or, lightning emitting weapons? I mean, like Zeus had, his weapon is the lightning bolt.
Lightning bolt. Yes, slinging lightning bolts. Well,
correct.
Then you have Thor with the hammer.
This is correct, but let me just kind of take this in a different way for a second.
Okay.
So in India, Indra, who is the sky god there, so Zeus, sky god in Greek cosmology, Indra, sky god in Indian cosmology, carries a Vajra, and many times it's shown as a three-pronged weapon that, emitted lightning. Now, get out of town, and when you see images of it, and you start looking at other pictures, you see images of Zeus carrying this three-pronged weapon that looks a whole lot like Indra's weapon.
Yes,
and you see an image of Marduk also carrying this three-pronged weapon that he used to annihilate Tiamat. And then if you come into the Americas, you have Talok, who it's not a three-pronged weapon, but looks a little bit more like a club. But depending on other images that you see maybe of Zeus, instead of looking like this three-pronged thing, it might look like a club. So there are variations of imagery, but it still emits lightning. So Talok's, thing still emits lightning, but that's in the Americas. Oh, wait, and Talok's a sky god. And the same.
He's there.
And the same thing with Thor. So we have this lightning emitting weapon, or we have this weapon that's carried by a sky god, and sometimes it's identified as being a club or a hammer, and so we have Zeus or Thor with his hammer. So we find these parallels all over the earth, which again adds to the concept that we have a global narrative And in my opinion, we're talking about a finite group of gods or a finite structure within a organization. Because many people believe that the names that we have for many of these gods are not necessarily like Frank or Joe, but more like Earth Goddess, Sky
Yes.
Father. So they're more their titles. So the individual might change, but the title stays the same.
Well, where did they go? Why?
Well,
The
go ahead,
Greeks still
why?
had them. The Romans still had them. But they're not considered even close to a reality now by the average bear.
Well, that's in my humble opinion. When I was writing the E.T. Chronicles man-made book, and I mean, just sitting down to write it, and trying to figure out how I was trying to figure out how to organize it. And one decision I had to make early on was that I had to accept the fact that this book was going to talk about extraterrestrials, even though I think I used the word extraterrestrial in the book once and refer to these individuals as gods because that's how myth reports them.
Yes.
And then the other concession that I had to make was that I was not writing the book for everyone on the planet, that I was writing this book for people in the Western world. Because when you step out of cultures that were not influenced by Abrahamic traditions, so Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, you find that they all believe in a pantheon of gods, and in many of them, they believe that these gods came from the sky.
Yes.
And so why do I need to write a book and try to explain this concept to people in India when they already believed it? And so then it took me down, I'll use your word, the rabbit hole of
It's
of
a very good word.
Oh, I know. And I've used it in the book, of how we ended up getting brainwashed. Because really in the West, there's one book, it's the Bible. And anything that is outside of those four corners is imagination. And so we have been taught, this is my new commentary. This is like, has only really come up in the last month or so. But who is it? And I would love to figure out who this person was, but I doubt I'll ever identify it. But who is it that came up with the conclusion that mythology was flights of fantasy, describing weather patterns, or describing universal archetypes? Who is it that took the stories that come from our mythic record and said that they're a bunch of hogwash talking about things that aren't real?
My guess would be someone in the Vatican.
Yeah, I don't know, and I'm not quite sure how far that goes back. I mean, because if you think about it, like in Ireland, for example, they still believed in the fairy folk, wee people.
There's a vast number of people in the U.S. who do.
But I'm talking about more, further back in time. And I mean, today,
yes.
I think people have broken out of that box. But, but I think it's just sad that, in writing the Stepping Out of Eden book, one of the things that I discovered that I did not know in all of my research, even as a kid, was that the number of archaeological remains, so of bones and whatever, that they have used to identify, the evolution of humanity from Australopithecus to Homo habilis to Homo neanderthalis, I joke around and say you could put it inside a cardboard box. I mean, there's really not that much. There's a jawbone, there's a leg bone, there's a piece of a cranium, and they have come up with these theories.
But they don't present them as theories. They present them as fact, absolute fact.
Well, yeah. Okay,
right?
So they come up with these facts based on I mean, I was doing this research about the evolution of our ability to walk upright. And, so the earliest one they thought was like 600, and I'm just kind of making this number up, but like 600 million years old, 6 million years old, 6 million. And the theory came forward because of a thigh bone and the way that they saw that the muscles attached to the thigh bone. And based on that, they made an early conclusion that this primate or early hominid could walk upright on one freaking thigh bone. I'm like, seriously? A thigh bone?
Well, and I understood when in your writing you were discussing the placement for the spine and the skull.
Mm-hmm.
But I do not, the thigh bone blows my mind, because who does that? If you took that on any other topic, that level of evidence into anything else, you would be ridiculed and lose your tenure.
But you see it all the time.
You do
coming
see it
out
all the time.
of, I'm going to say the scientific community. And
Not
what
so
blows me,
scientific.
yeah. But what blows me away is, okay, so we have this one cardboard box of parts, and we have this vast array of mythology coming from cultures around the world, and the depth and breadth and beauty of it. And they don't want to even look at it. They don't even want to touch the possibility that maybe there could be some truth to it. Maybe. Because they're so freaking brainwashed.
Well, they are so brainwashed, and the purpose of that is to brainwash society as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just completely to deny. I think that it's geared to deny any gods, big G or little g, because that's the way that people have been teaching, and the evolution of our educational system, and it just seems to be flowing in that manner. And if you are a devout practicing member of really any faith, then you're a radical. You're not stable. And that narrative has been in place for at least 25 years that I'm aware of, since I started paying attention to it closely. It just really is mind-boggling.
But that's really kind of a big change, where people who were it are now being ostracized for what they think and what they feel and what they believe. So I find that that's been a very interesting turn of events. But it seems like, especially when you talk about ancient mysteries, archaeology, that area, they're still trying to fit it into the narrative that society began, about 6,000 years ago with the rise of the Sumerians. But people like Michael Cremo keep bringing to the forefront, these out of place artifacts. Or we have sites like Göbekli Tepe that surely shouldn't be there.
Exactly.
I think one of my favorites is Sacsayhuaman in South America. And if anybody's not familiar with that name, I'm sure they've seen the images where it's that giant wall that's in Peru that's made up of a bunch of blocks that
The H blocks
are like carved. They're like intricately carved, like puzzle pieces, and you can't quite figure out how the heck they did it. Especially they're giant size, and they go up 2 and 3 courses. And you can't put a piece of paper in between the stones. They're just perfect.
I love that. My
I
husband's
love
a
that,
machinist,
too.
and that blows him away.
And, and so the conclusion about them is that they were, built in like 1500 AD by the Inca. That's, if you read in books, that's kind of the general consensus. But then individuals that actually interacted with the Inca at that point in time, they said, well, who built this stuff? And they said the giants. And when the Spanish got there, they didn't understand how they lost all of the technology to build these walls and had no understanding of how to build these walls, even though they had only built them, quote unquote, 50 years before.
Yes.
And it's like, well, maybe it's because they didn't build them and it wasn't their technology, and maybe them saying they didn't build them, they should listen. But they don't want to. They want to just put words in people's mouths to make it work for them.
Yes. And on that note, we're late for our break, but I was not going to interrupt that train of thought because that was fascinating. So this is a little 2-minute break, and we'll be back on the flip side.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
And we are back. You're listening to Paranormal Experience Radio. I am your host, Kat Hobson, and I am joined by Dr. Tina Louise, and we are having a great time. So I am just having a ball having this discussion. You are so informative.
Thank you.
And it just...
I'm sorry, you called me Tina, and Tina Louise was on Gilligan's Island, so it just made me laugh.
did I really? I am so sorry.
You did. You're not the first.
Freudian slip. I apologize. Dr. Rita Louise. And, during the break, we were talking about the work that had to have gone into creating these blocks. I've heard all kinds of theorists expound on this from, they just melted the block and then, they softened it, they put a substance around it and used that to cut it. Well, there's no records of that, and I haven't seen it anywhere else that I'm aware of. And my husband is a machinist, and he is an excellent manual machinist, and it blows him away. And you had referred me for him to Christopher Dunn, who is also a machinist who has investigated these. So it's just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody wants to give a reasonable answer, which is somebody machined those babies and they held tight tolerances and they were able to build that.
Well, and I think, so if you look at the mythic record, it suggests that there was a race of beings on the earth prior to the advent of humanity, and it was a race of giants,
yes.
The Earthborn in Greek mythology. And you ask some cultures, like we were talking about on the break, that Sacsayhuaman site, if you ask the indigenous people back in the day who built it, they said the giants. So that response is consistent with the storyline and their loss of the technological expertise. But the same thing with like the pyramids. They were built using a level of technology that it seems predates the more current Egyptians, the Egyptians that, came to rise about 2500 BC.
I heard an interesting piece of information at a conference I attended recently relevant to that, and that was that they had found a papyrus that was kind of a diary, a journal of someone who is thought to have been a construction manager type person and on the Building Pyramids project. And he describes how they did that, like getting them in from the Nile and stuff. And I was just like, there is no way. Really? I have heard nothing else about it except that from an Egyptologist at AlienCon in June. So, have you heard anything of that nature?
I have not heard that. I've had a couple of other people make a statement similar. I haven't heard about the papyrus, but I did hear one theory that kind of actually made sense to me, even though some people will come up with theories. Like I came up with a theory about why Göbekli Tepe was buried, and it was poo-pooed, even though there are some people, when I share it with, they're like, that makes total sense. And so somebody shared a theory about the building of the pyramids, because they're attested to being built by Khufu. And his comment was, because supposedly he built them in 20 years, or the Grand Pyramid was built in 20 years, which I don't even know how they could possibly do that. At the speed that they would have to cut and move and install stone, I don't see how they could do that.
Well, that's what this Egyptologist was so upset about, because the general consensus was that it took them 40-something years, and this papyrus said that it took 27. So they are so upset because they were less than half the time that they felt like it would have taken. And I thought, well, maybe it's wrong. Well, that's a lot of work to do in that time frame.
But what he suggested was that the pyramids existed during I can't say his name tonight.
That's okay.
Khufu's reign. And what he did was that he re-encased the pyramid in limestone. So he just put the limestone blocks on the outside of an existing structure. Now that you could do in 20 years and do pretty quick. Now, most of those blocks are missing again. But have you ever noticed, like if you look at pictures of the three pyramids, the amount of erosion in that stone? I mean, granted, it's sandstone, but there's a lot of erosion in it. Now, yes. Robert Schoch has looked at the erosion of the Sphinx, but no one's looked at the erosion on the pyramids. And how long would it take, and what kind of weather conditions would you need to have that stone be wore out the way that it is? But no one looks at it. Even though, not that I'm a geologist and would know anything, but I would look at it.
I could see that. That would be a logical step.
But I think resurfacing it and then kind of taking ownership, like, hey, yeah, I did the pyramids, would make a lot of sense, especially with the mentality that the Egyptians seem to have. They would scratch out somebody's name off of one monument and put their name on top, that was just kind of common practice back then. And so I could see, because those pyramids are identified with being some of the earliest building in that area. So basically the way that they want the timeline to read is about 4,500 BC, we somehow, miraculously, came up with writing, got the wheel, figured out astronomy, came up with the whole legal system, did all of these things in Sumeria, and then not much after that, we started doing the same thing in Egypt, but then we started building these massive buildings in a construction project that we can't figure out even today how they did it, and would never be able to replicate it.
No. But nothing to see here, folks.
Yeah, nothing to see here. And then in South America, they don't even try to touch it. They just don't even go there. It's like, yeah. Oh, yeah, that stuff.
It's like in Thailand as well. There's so many of these ancient holy sites all over the globe. You have, nobody even talks about the stuff in Tibet because maybe it's because it would be all destroyed if the narrative went that way right now. But it is just amazing to me that nobody seems to know that these things are all global.
Mm-hmm.
It's just ignored. Well, for the most part.
For the most part. So in addition to my books, I also have a couple of videos, and one of them is called Icon, Deconstructing the Archetypes of the Ancients, which is available on Amazon.com for $1.99. So it's cheap. Can't even get a Starbucks for that price. And it looks at like architecture, and levels of craftsmanship to maybe be a signature of who the architect was. Because different architects construct in different styles. And if you look around the globe, you find that megalithic, pieces fit together construction in different sites around the world. But why would, why? That just doesn't even make sense. And they look very similar. How they're done, it looks very similar. But then as you move forward in time, it's like the craftsmanship goes away.
It does.
And so it looks at art and architecture and, like most of my work, it asks a lot of questions and makes you really think about, well, this is what we have and look at these parallels and similarities and, but it's really visual. I had to make it as a video because there was no way to pull it together in a text format. So it's really interesting, and it has a great soundtrack.
I love a great soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'm looking at the clock, so I'll just make this quick. So, I had finished the video, and this guy, Chris, did the music for me, and I was testing it out. I burned a DVD, and I put it into my DVD player in the living room, and, I was doing something, and I don't know, somehow it got turned on, and I'm kind of in the kitchen and I hear this thing and I'm kind of listening to it and the music in the background. I'm like, hey, that video sounds pretty interesting. And I go in the other room and it was mine.
How awesome is that?
Mm-hmm. It was really cool.
You blew your own self out of the water.
I did.
That's cool. Well, when you were putting that together, is it not difficult to, I know you said that it couldn't be done in text, but it just seems there's so much information, and I do know that we've only got about 30 seconds left, but it just seems like that would be a difficult thing to even do in a video, to pull things together visually. I guess visual is the only way you could do that, though.
Mm-hmm. And I just took some very finite, because one of my big points is really putting out that there's a global narrative, and there is this core that makes us be human. And so this was just another aspect of looking at this global comparison of things.
Right. Well, I find it fascinating. So far, there's nothing of yours that I've touched that I wasn't just drawn into. So
thank you.
That's pretty telling about how much research and information you put into that. But We are up at our top of the hour news break. We'll be back in 5. This is a great time to do your cartwheels, stretch your legs, take the dog out, whatever you need to do. So we will catch you on the flip side of this. Thanks for being here. We'll see you in 5.
Support for NPR and the following message come from Delta, featuring free messaging for keeping you connected to your friends and family while you're in the air. Just connect to Wi-Fi and use your messaging app of choice. Delta, connecting your life in the air to your life on the ground.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Speer. The FBI is providing new details about what it calls potentially destructive devices sent to various high-profile Democrats. NPR's Barbara Sprunt has the story.
The FBI described 5 suspicious packages that were addressed to leading Democrats, including former President Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, all large manila envelopes with the same return address, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office in Florida. The FBI says the packages are being sent to its laboratory in Quantico, Virginia, for further examination. The Bureau also says it's possible that more packages are still out there.
NPR's Barbara Sprunt. With the number of suspicious packages being sent to top Democrats and government officials rising, President Trump said today a major federal investigation is underway. Speaking at a White House conference on the opioid epidemic, the president also called the sending of the packages to former President Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and CNN a despicable act, and noted that no expense will be spared in finding whomever is to blame. Congressional investigators say immigration and health officials were blindsided by the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy for migrants crossing the southwest border. As NPR's Joel Rose explains, that's the finding of a report released today by the Nonpartisan Government Accountability Office.
The GAO report says officials at the Departments of Homeland Security and Health and Human Services did not plan for an increase in the number of children separated from their parents at the border. Officials at DHS and HHS told investigators they did not know in advance that Attorney General Jeff Sessions planned to begin prosecuting everyone crossing the border illegally until he announced the policy publicly. That zero-tolerance policy caused thousands of children to be separated from their parents. More than 2,500 children ended up in government-sponsored shelters before President Trump was forced to abandon the family separation policy under intense political pressure, and a federal judge ordered the families to be reunited. Joel Rose, NPR News, New York.
Officials in New Jersey are giving an update on the adenovirus outbreak at a medical facility there that has left 7 children dead and a number of others sickened. The outbreak affected pediatric patients at the Wenatchee Center for Nursing and Rehabilitation. The children had severely vulnerable immune systems. New Jersey Health Commissioner Dr. Shreve Ellenall says this strain of virus is particularly known to affect group living arrangements.
It is not the first outbreak like this in New Jersey, and it's been known to cause more severe illness even in those with normal immune systems, let alone these children.
Health officials say all of the infections occurred in that facility's respiratory or ventilator unit. A blizzard of selling in the final part of the trading day sent stocks sharply lower today. The Dow dropped 608 points to 24,583, a decline of 2.4%. The Nasdaq was down 329 points today. You're listening to NPR. The head of Apple is endorsing tough new privacy laws for both Europe and the U.S., along with renewing a commitment to protect users' personal data. Apple's CEO Tim Cook also warned that in some cases people's personal data is, quote, being weaponized. Cook made his remarks at an international conference on data privacy today in Brussels. He also said that Apple fully supports a comprehensive federal privacy law for the U.S. Sales of new homes fell by more than 5% last month. That marks 4 straight monthly declines. NPR's Camila Dominowski reports.
The latest numbers out of the Commerce Department show the sale of new homes dropped noticeably in September compared to the month before. And last week, the National Association of Realtors reported that sales of existing homes have also been falling. Lawrence Yoon is the chief economist for the association.
The economic backdrop is quite good with job creation, the wealth rising in the country, yet home sales are not rising along with the economy.
Analysts say the slowdown is driven by rising interest rates, which make buying a house more expensive. That's on top of housing prices that had already risen past the point of affordability for many would-be buyers. Camila Dominowski, NPR News.
Love it or hate it has become a staple of Thanksgiving dinner for millions of Americans, the ubiquitous green bean casserole. Now, there's word the woman who created that mixture of green beans, cream of mushroom soup, and crunchy fried onions has died. Dorcas Riley died earlier this month in Haddonfield, New Jersey. She came up with the casserole while a kitchen supervisor at the Campbell Soup Company in 1955. She was 92 years old. I'm Jack Spear, NPR News in Washington.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Hello there. Welcome back to Paranormal Experienced Radio. I am your host, Kat Hobson. I am having the best time tonight because I am joined by Dr. Rita Louise, who is an author. She also is a radio host in her own right. She hosts Just Energy Radio. She's also the founder of the Institute of Applied Energetics, and I'd like to learn more about that as well as the writings. But there is one title that I'm interested in would like to ask about, if you don't mind, Rita.
No, go ahead.
Okay. The title, Lies and Deception, The Reptilian Agenda.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't started that one yet. And the title fascinates me because I have a friend who has had very good experiences with reptilians. But she's the only person I've ever spoken to who admits to having had good experiences with reptilians. So, and speaks of them as loving and gentle and all the things that you've never heard applied to them. So I was just curious, what did you learn as you were writing that particular book?
Well, it's not a book. It's just an article.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just an article. And I guess the point of the article, okay, so I've heard the same thing. I mean, I don't know anyone personally, or can I say that as a true statement? I probably know someone personally that has had good experiences with reptilians, but they get a lot of bad slack. But my point in writing that article is that when you look at the mythic record, there's stories that come out of contemporary ufology, involving reptilians, abduction scenarios, a number of different things. And when you start looking at stories that come from the mythic record and comparing it to information from the contemporary UFO community, you find parallels, leading you to believe that they've never left, that there is still this extraterrestrial, if you want to call it extraterrestrials, because according to the mythic record, the half man, half snake, half man, half fish characters that are usually tied to a concept of being a fertility god, lived on the earth first, and so they complain that, that they were here first, and the mythic record supports that notion that they were here on the earth and that they were fought, and lost a war against this group of sky gods who took control of the planet. And so, so that's, and you hear that same narrative coming out of contemporary ufology that, the reptilians were here first. This is their planet. They were here first. And so I decided to kind of take information that came out of contemporary ufology and kind of compare and contrast what you find in the mythic record, and then kind of look at, well, what do they want and why are they here? Which there really is not a whole lot of information, both in the mythic record as well as contemporary wise. We don't really know, whether we're talking about reptilians or Nordics or Syrians or Palladians, any of those guys. We really don't know what their motives are. I mean, they could tell us something, but do you really want to trust them? Really?
Not off the bat, first time I meet them.
Many, many years ago, actually, it was Barbara Hand-Clow wrote a book, The Palladian Agenda. And then there was another book, and that book talked about us moving into the Galactic Center, and the Palladians, and it was a very uplifting, heartwarming, wonderful book. And around the same time, there was another book called We Are Becoming Galactic Humans by...
Yes, I've read that.
So I don't remember the author. Well, did you make it through the whole book?
No.
I made it maybe halfway, maybe. I started having bad dreams. Mm-hmm. And I started having dreams of, ships coming down and like weird stuff. And I had to stop reading it because it scared the crap out of me. And I'm going to share this story because it was really funny. So, this was a while after reading that book, like maybe a year later, and I'm getting ready to go to a show, like, a trade show thing, and I'm doing my hair, and the power cuts out. Just cut out. And I freaked out. I'm like, oh my God, they're here. It's the 3 days, and I freaked out. I wasn't running up and down the street or anything, but I just stopped and was like, oh my God, but then I realized that the radio was still playing.
Right. So
I'm like, oh, okay.
With your,
but so I came back after that, oh my God. And, and so I ended up writing this article about that concept because one book really addressed everything from a fear-based perspective, and it just scared the crap out of you.
Yes.
And the other book was loving and kind, but, we can be manipulated through love and kindness and thinking that they're working for our highest good. And we don't know. So we hear stuff coming from people that are experiencers, but do we really know?
Well, we don't, because in my experience, all the people who have ever told me that they were hybrid were all Palladians. Okay? So, not that I don't think that's the statistically supported possibility that everyone is Palladian. But I found it interesting because that's who I think all the people that would like to be hybrid consider the good guys. So obviously they must be a good guy too.
Except they're making hybrid babies in the covert operation.
Exactly.
That's good.
But, we never talk about that part of it, right?
But see, that would be the question that I would be asking.
It is my question. And also, how do you know that you're Palladian? I'm drawn to the Pleiades, but only because of the myth behind it, and I can see it. And it's always right there off Orion's tip. So I love that. I am a star watcher, and that's my color Kool-Aid. But without a doubt, every person who has said they're hybrid says that that's the race that they are, the species they are, whatever terminology you prefer. And I just find that interesting.
But and you don't really know what to do with it. Personally, I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with it either. And I care very much for some of these people, and I don't want to be seeming like I'm belittling their opinion or their self-definition. But it just seems odd to me that there's not a single person who's a hybrid reptilian. There's not a single person who is from anywhere else. So, just
that goes. That just goes with the whole there's a group of reptilians that live in underground bases and they're controlling the whole world. Which
and they chase people before they eat them because the adrenaline makes them tasty. I've heard that
Well, that's
too.
because they're like feeding off of our energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, and so it's kind of like, okay, so what do you do with that? But then there's a part of me, because I feel like the mythic record on some level supports some of that conjecture.
Right.
But
Well,
then
it
there's
does,
yet that
to a
other
degree.
rabbit hole where it's kind of like, okay, so if that's true, then what are the implications of that? And that's a rabbit hole I don't really want to go down, even though I know it's a possibility. You can't say it's not true because it could be.
It could be. I mean, because nobody is forthcoming with the information. The people that know the answers to questions are not forthcoming. And so we don't know what we would be dealing with were something to actually, quote, show up on the White House lawn, end quote. But it's a little freaky to contemplate.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know. I think that we need to kind of get a handle on who's good, who's bad. Probably just like us, there's some of each and everywhere. So, I don't know. I just sit back and I look at this stuff, and I like mythology. I like Joseph Campbell. I'm trying to understand some of the things that I find in his library. I'm trying to learn just about everything right now, from electronics to alien species. But I'm so fascinated by the contemplation of people who have been here. And yes, that is my creaky chair. I apologize. But I am just so astounded that people just kind of don't even seem interested in having discussions about things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
But then there is a whole bit.
But then there is a whole group that is interested, So, I mean, we just live in such a diverse, and I don't want to say divided, but divided society. And I feel like people that are open to looking at the possibilities, seem to end up in the same place,
Yes.
And then there's this whole other group that, they just want to stay in the box because the box is easier or safer, or, well, that's what somebody said. So it must be true. When I give presentations, when I give presentations on myth, I like talking about myth as history, the possibility that myth is history, and how we've been brainwashed. So I'm going to ask you this question, but this is really to everyone listening. Okay. And so I'm going to ask a question, and I want you to just spurt out your first knee-jerk reaction. So I don't want any editing, just the first thing that comes to mind. Okay? So you have to be really kind of honest on this.
Okay.
Ready? Okay. Who discovered America? Oh, come on.
My knee-jerk is Christopher Columbus, but it's not. It's Ponce de Leon.
Well, he didn't even discover it. What about those stupid Vikings and those pesky Native Americans?
Yes.
But my point being, the knee-jerk reaction, unless you've stepped outside of the box, is Christopher Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll ask that question, and, every so often I'll have someone that will yell out a different answer, and I'm like, and you didn't think Columbus first? And I don't believe them.
Well, I did think Columbus first, but then I thought, well,
everybody always
was
thinks
here
Columbus
before he was, and then the people that walked over from Russia were, the indigenous.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right.
Yeah,
it is a knee-jerk.
But the programming we received, and so we have to learn new things to break out of the programming that we were indoctrinated to. I mean, people don't recognize, and that was kind of one of the underlying themes that goes through that Stepping Out of Eden book, is the concept of programming, and I can see we're about ready to take a break. So why don't we come back to that on the other side?
We will do that. And this one is 3 minutes, so y'all just enjoy, and we'll see you in a sec.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
Welcome back to Paranormal Experience Radio. I'm Kat Hobson. I'm your host, but y'all knew that. And I am joined by my guest, Dr. Rita Louise. And we have been talking ETs and mythological history. We're covering it all. And I am having the best time. So I really appreciate you being here.
Well, I appreciate you letting me be here with you. Whatever that was.
Well, it's fantastic. And we have a comment, and I do not have my glasses, but I hate when my arms get shorter as I age. Brenda thinks that Hollywood invented the so-called reptilians. I'm like, they were there before Hollywood. But is there documentation of that?
So in mythology, they don't say reptilian, obviously.
Right.
But there are multiple references in multiple cultures to the half man, half serpent, half snake character. Like Quetzalcoatl was that character. Fuxi and Muwa in China were those characters. Actually, if you look at Michelangelo's picture of the Garden of Eden, the Tempting of Eve, I think is the name of it, and there's the snake in the tree, but the snake has the upper body of a human and a serpent tail. So from a very long time, So my belief is that these stories predate what we consider quote unquote humanity by many, many, many thousands of years. And that have been, because there are stories that they find in Australia that they trace back to 10,000 years ago. So let's say 10,000 years ago, but I think they're even older than that. And, but they weren't really doing imagery. We find, the cave paintings, we find some very early carving. But as far as writing or as far as doing graphic representations in pictures of things, that really doesn't come in until much later. And so when this half man, half snake is represented in art, it is depicted with the kind of like a centaur, with the upper body of a man and the bottom of a snake, where a centaur is the upper body of a man with the hindquarters of a horse, or the body of a horse. But what if they took a description that it was half man, half snake, or half man, half fish, and took that description and created that image because it was a little more socially accepting to have a human body and a snake bottom versus a half man, half snake being a humanoid, aka has a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs, but looks like a snake, which would be more of a description of a reptilian. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's really not that big of a leap to say, that the way that we envision these half man, half snakes might be in error. That it's not the upper body of a man and the bottom of a snake, but more reptilian in nature.
Well, iguanas and salamanders are reptilian.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and they have legs. So there's all kinds of possibilities that you could go to with that.
Mm-hmm. So it's just not that far flung, and there are some people that theorize that, they're tied to the evolution of dinosaurs, back in the day, that either they were dinosaurs that developed further, and became cognizant, or that they were a race of beings that actually promoted the evolution of animals to include the dinosaurs because they created them in their image, where we're created in the sky god's image.
Interesting. That is a whole different mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
I like it. Doing this work, it really, I do psychic work. That's, my day job. And when you do that kind of work, you're really required to take a step back and look, this is what I see. This is what I see in your space. This is what's going on in your body, whatever that is, and be really neutral to it and not have an opinion, because if you inject your opinion, then you're not giving them a real reading. You're just supposed to look at it. I'm going to say do a certain amount of interpretation and then report it back. And so that's kind of my methodology is I take this information and I kind of organize it and somewhat interpret it, but more importantly, I just report it for you to sit there and make the decision of what you want to do with it. I joke around and go, I'm one of those people that like reading those really dry and dusty books that are in most people's libraries that haven't seen the light of day. Yes. That's my favorite stuff to research. Like, you mentioned Joseph Campbell, and I don't read Joseph Campbell because he really has an opinion about the stories, that they are not true And, he doesn't report it. He gives an opinion about what he thinks
well,
they are.
Yes. And I just ignore that because I think they are true.
Mm-hmm.
So I met the gentleman, Jonathan, who's the curator of that library, and I thought, you seem so much more loose than I would have thought you were going to be. And he is. He's very relaxed and very nice and not at all what I anticipated. But I just like trying to learn as much as I can, and I also like forming my own opinions. So I don't generally take someone else's that strongly into account when it's something like that.
Well, and one of the things that I found is that books that are written prior to, I'm going to say 1930s, so late 1800s, early 1900s, they just kind of tell you the information. Now, it's also during the period of like the European expansion, going into New Zealand, or even if I can find books that are, the Spanish chroniclers. I mean, that's where I like to look for my source information, is as close to the mouth as possible. And, but it seems like after the 30s that material starts to get whitewashed and you don't get all the information. For example, there is this one book, the Gold Mines of Rhodesia, which I think Rhodesia is now Zimbabwe. And this guy's talking about all of these ancient gold mines all over the place, and about how, some of the earliest finds that they have of like these gold nuggets or these gold beads were the most beautiful and the most finely done. And then as they come more current, they're not as well processed, blah, 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 the same line. But what killed me in it was that, he's talking about these gold mines and these burial areas. And then he just is like, yeah, and they found some giants there, and he just like starts talking about these giants. I mean, just kind of in passing.
Right.
And then just moves on. Well, anymore, you don't find books like that because it doesn't fit the narrative, that they would maybe have an advanced culture in South Africa, and God forbid that you just like, oh, and by the way, we found a bunch of giant bones in this cemetery.
We don't even get that when they find them on a dig where it's a public thing that they found them. They don't even talk about them. That was recent.
See, I haven't heard about that one, but it seems like, like Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira, write about the giants. But the bulk of the evidence that they provide, and this is not anything against them, but the bulk of the evidence they provide is all like pre-1930, because it stopped being covered after that. And no one's really given me a really good explanation why there was just such a big shift in both, I'm going to say more academic, I don't want to say scientific, academic writing, as well as in like media reporting, because it's not the same.
Well, it's not the same, but don't you think that a lot of that had to do with the time frame as well? Because there was a lot of wheeling and dealing and moving and shaking, and ostensibly there was a lot of alien involvement with governments in that time period as well, with just kind of helping, is my take on it. But I find it interesting because I didn't realize that. I hadn't thought of that, but you're right. So that's fascinating, really.
I just don't know, because Roswell was 47, and so, the shift happened definitely before that. I mean, by the 30s, it's pretty noticeable that it's different, and it just gets way worse real fast after that.
Well, and then there's Roswell.
Right, but then there's
which
47.
had to be acknowledged in some manner. So it became
well,
false.
That whole thing is a joke.
Yes.
I just think it's interesting, we have these, I'm really glad that people have cell phones, because they're taking pictures of all of this stuff. And the ones that I really appreciate is, I guess it comes from like areas where they have dash cams, and so
True.
they'll be like filming something, but then there's like multiple people driving along, so you have multiple people. So it's a multiple person sighting, which, all right, how many people do you need to have sighted from all over an area before you go, okay, maybe it's something, like Phoenix Lights, hundreds or thousands of people,
right?
Hundreds or thousands of people saw it. They filmed it, but it was, our imagination, it was just flares, which it so wasn't flares.
Well, that just gets on my last nerve too, because when I have a place at the beach, when I am out on the sand, oftentimes people are doing a memorial or a wedding, and they fire up the Chinese lanterns and let them go. They move in very specific ways, and they move up, and they move very slowly. They do not move in a steady direction because they're windblown. And there is no rhyme or reason to which direction they go. So when I sit there and I'm reading what is ostensibly documentation of something of that nature, I'm just like, I know that the education system is designed to dumb down everyone to the same level, which is why so many people who can manage to go to schools outside of the public education system, but it's not that effective. People still have the intelligence to understand that this is a load of crap, and they don't want it on their shoes. So, it's insulting.
Well, and I think, and I don't mean to get into the whole political thing, but as we watch this crazy political atmosphere unfold before our very eyes, it's kind of like, so who's telling the truth and who are the big fat liars? And if it's there, then how far spread is it into everything that's going on?
Right.
And I think people are watching it on the big screen.
Yes. Absolutely. It blows my mind. I have never understood, if you're going to try to sell something, at least try to sell it well. Put some money into this, put some effort into this, make me believe. It's just so bizarre that there's really, they don't even try.
Mm-mm.
Other than to mock and ridicule anyone who comes forward and says that they experienced something.
Mm-hmm.
And people, people are used to that now.
Well, and it seems like, that's how they control everything, is by, it used to be that scientists were supposed to look at things that were unexplained, and their job was to find answers to this unexplained thing. I thought that's what science was about.
Well, science
but it doesn't seem that way.
This isn't science. This is an agenda.
Well, I know that, and you know that, and probably your listeners know that. But it's kind of like, well, then why say that it's science? Because it's not. It's just managing and keeping, the status quo.
And when that shifts, it never ends well for the people that were trying to hide things.
No.
And people, it seems like the people that are trying to control that narrative forget that, because they do go shoddy on how they're trying it.
Or they just act like, nothing ever happened. I mean, I really am waiting for a UFO to land on the White House lawn, so then all the naysayers you can just be like, ha ha. I mean, what are they going to do?
They're going to start yelling CGI like they do with paranormal evidence. So, but there's a very interesting book written by a friend of mine, Ray Davis. It's called, what's the first name? Anunnaki Awakening? Oh dear. But it's part of a trilogy. He's got the second book about to come out, but in this instance, his protagonist is a White House reporter, part of the press pool, and she is communicated with by an Anunnaki. And the whole concept blew my mind the first time that I got involved with reading that book. And now my toes are tapping, waiting on the next one, and he gets nervous when I say that because he knows that I'm serious. I want that book. So it is Anunnaki Awakening is the first one. Revelation. Anunnaki Awakening Revelation. And it is, it lands on, it shows up. There's no doubt. But it's all being sold as garbage. And she's like, no, this isn't garbage. And the whole thing is really an interesting read because it's what happens when they do show up on the White House lawn. And you have a reporter that goes rogue because she's communicating with them. And it's just a neat concept, but, I can actually...
Sounds like it makes you think.
It does make you think. Because I was not very familiar with, beyond the obvious light reading and researching, not getting really into it, with the Anunnaki. And I read that book, and he went into great detail with, the correct names, with the governing family and that type of thing, and all kinds of information. And I was reading that, and I thought, oh, I have got to learn more about this, because I knew that was a pretty hot topic, and from sitching on. So I thought, well, and then I started really working on that, and mind blown. And with that, we are at 43 minutes after the hour, so we're going to take a 2-minute break. We'll be right back.
listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
You are back with Paranormal Experienced Radio. I'm Kat, and my guest tonight is Dr. Rita Louise. This has been a great show. If you have missed any of it, you're going to have to go back and pick us up on iHeart, iTunes, or Google Play, because this is astounding. I will post the links in my Facebook when we get through. But Rita, where do you want to go now? This is all about you. What would you like to cover for this last segment?
Okay. Well, I think it is, something I started bringing up before one of the breaks that we didn't come back to. And, well, when we were talking about Columbus and that level of programming that we've all experienced, and it's not just like the programming that we get in school, but the programming that society imposes on us. I mean, by the time we're in kindergarten, we know what a red light means and a green light means. And, we know all of this stuff because it's been downloaded to us over, years of practice and education. And I just don't think people recognize how much programming we have taken on.
Yes.
But without that programming, then who would we be? Would we still be human? Because in my opinion, it is that programming. I just read The Four Agreements by Don Luis, whatever, and he called it domestication. And that's what got me to read his book, was because in my E.T. Chronicles book, I talk about how, humans seem more domesticated than anything else. And, I guess the Stepping Out of Eden book really delves into how we were domesticated, and how we were programmed. And is it this level of programming that we've experienced over thousands and thousands and thousands of years, what separates us from all of the other animals and makes us be human?
And
that's kind of, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that part was so interesting, because when things started changing in humans, it was something I had not really thought that much about, to be honest. Not in that way, not to that degree. But it really blew my mind. And I didn't even get, as far as I was wanting to. And it was still just bizarre to my mindset.
I mean, it's kind of hard to believe because we've been so indoctrinated into this system, so that by the time we're adults, we're fully incorporated, and we think that we're independent thinkers or that we're free. This morning I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about, having choices. And it's like, what choices? We were talking about supermarkets. They closed down a mom and pop supermarket near where he lives. And so now he has to drive like 15 miles to get to any store. And he goes, well, they're taking away choices. It's like, okay, well, they took away that choice to go to that store, but you go in the store and there really aren't any choices. One, you have to get what's on the shelf.
That's true.
And then two, you go from store to store and it's pretty much the same stuff on the shelf. Unless you go to
the same stuff.
And so, if you're doing home repair stuff and you're getting like lighting fixtures from Lowe's, how many other gajillion people have those same lighting fixtures in their house because they only have so many?
Or Wayfair because everybody sees them on HGTV and has to have that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Exactly.
It's programming that makes you follow that herd.
But it's also that somebody else is making choices and telling you this is good. We like this. Converse are in, high tops or low tops. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's, do you roll up the cuffs of your jeans because that's cool? Somewhere somebody is making those decisions and then making that stuff available. Like I like jeans. Okay, this is just a little personal peeve. I like jeans that are either like a bootleg or, a bell bottom.
Mm-hmm.
I've taken a lot of dance classes in my life, so I have some pretty healthy calves for being, as old as I am. I don't have stick legs. And so the jeans that they sell now are all these like peg leg, straight leg things that, I guess they look okay, but I'm not totally digging them. I would like to have like a little flare at the bottom of my pants to cover up my socks that might not match my shoes. And you know what I mean?
I do.
That's just my that's what I would like. And you cannot find a pair of boot cut or bell bottom type jeans. Everything in the stores right now is all this straight leg stuff. And it's just like, so now I have a closet with a bunch of straight leg stuff because I can't find any other pants to get.
Well, I will tell you after the show where to go find those.
Okay, cool.
But because I like to wear boots under my jeans. I like them over my jeans too, but sometimes you need the ones under them.
Mm-hmm.
But, well, the programming thing, to get back to that, it does go down to, what kind of butters are there. And now it's going to censorship with Facebook deciding if you're a real person or not when you've had an account for 20 years. Well, not 20. I don't think they've been there 20 years. But, all of a sudden, dissension is not allowed. And that's a scary thing because 1984 was not supposed to be an operations manual.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it is.
Or they take your post down, or they put you in Facebook jail, or they make it so that, you can post, but no one sees anything from your feed.
Well, it's like tonight when I was trying to, yesterday and today when I was trying to invite friends to enjoy this show, they let me invite 20. Not even the 50 that you're supposed to get as a minimum. Normally I can invite 500 people to a show. Blew my mind. And I often think it's due to topics. So if I'm having somebody who
that's because Facebook doesn't like me.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, they're probably not going to like me after I write my note to them about that. But they took my money to boost it, but they wouldn't let me invite my friends to it. So that's a discussion to be had too.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was interesting, and it really peeved me.
When you start putting money where it's going, it's like it should work the way it's advertised.
Absolutely. Well, what do you have coming up next? What's your next big project that you're working on?
I just had this book come out.
Yes.
I've been restoring this historic home, and I just finished doing the last inside room of the house and had a housewarming party. Only took me 4 years and had a housewarming party a week ago on Saturday. So I'm kind of in a little bit of transition mode right now.
Yes.
I know that I want to do some more writing, because you write a book and then it takes you however many months to go through and edit it and do all that process. So I'm really ready to sit down and do some more writing, maybe create some more videos. I don't really have a list yet because that's Monday's project, because I just been running around and, just got back in town from being in New York, hanging out with Tom Conwell. And so I'm like, okay, this new phase starts on Monday. So I just been like pre-planning. I do have another book that I started kind of before I did the Stepping Out of Eden book. And I might go back to that, but that won't be for a little bit. I have like 17 pages written. So, but it's just in its infancy. But I just felt like doing the Stepping Out of Eden book needed to come first. So that's why I put that one on hold. So, and then I always have like projects at my house to do. So, that keeps me really out of trouble.
That's a never ending thing.
No, not when you have a really old house. No, there's always something.
My house is not very old, but I have all the things that nobody took with them when they left in my basement. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, my dad and my grandmother's things that came when he crossed. And so, yes, lots of stuff. That's my projects. And trying to write and trying to blog and book guests and research guests and read all the books. So it's a wonderful thing. I love my job. I get to meet people like you.
Same here.
It's cool.
I mean, I love doing the work that I do, and I'm glad that I'm able to do it, and that the universe supports me in doing it.
Yes.
So it makes me feel blessed. I was talking to a friend, well, not really a friend, somebody, well, regardless, and they asked me to send them a resume. And I'm like, I don't really. Well, no, it's like I haven't had to have a resume in over 20 years because I've worked for myself. So It's kind of like, well, here's my 5 websites. Does that count?
And you can read about me on all of them.
Yeah, or type me into, Google. You'll find my stuff everywhere. I mean, why do you need a resume? You can just look me up,
Was that
apparently that wasn't the right answer. No, it was a more personal thing. And it was just like, seriously? And then they just were like, bullshit. Ooh, excuse my French, sorry.
That's okay.
And it was kind of like, sorry, I've worked for myself for 20 years. Why would I need a resume?
That's an interesting situation to find yourself in.
What, working for yourself?
Having to provide a resume after having done so because, I'm sure that my work record shows corporate climber and then disappeared off the face of the earth. So, and now this. Quite a step. I'm nothing like that corporate guru I once was. And thank God for it. But, I am so appreciative of you taking your time and giving it to myself and my listeners.
Well, and I appreciate you having me. So if people are looking for any of my books or CDs, obviously they're available, on Amazon or any, online bookseller. They're also available on my website, soulhealer.com, SOULHEALER.com, soulhealer.com. And anything that you do purchase from me comes signed directly from me, no extra charge. So
that's wonderful. I know somebody who is going to be grabbing those. Every book in her library, I believe, is signed.
Cool.
If she didn't get it signed when she received it, then she has gone to the effort to meet the authors and get a signature. So
nice.
And I think that's pretty cool.
So, that would be cool.
I was lucky enough to interview Jim Mars shortly before he passed. And I was I was so honored. But I had met him in California and gotten a signed book, and I'm so glad that I did because he turned out to be such a wonderful man. You never know, when you go to meet someone like that. And so now I have that book, and it just warms my heart when I pick it up and start reading it again. So, because I reread everything. But thank you again. And that was soulhealer.com. And you can be found by Dr. Rita Louise on Facebook, as well as online. And I just appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you too. And thank you so much for having me on your show and sharing my insight with your listener.
Absolutely. They wouldn't have missed it for anything. And that being and that being said, it is time for us to bid adieu. But you know what? Same cat time, same cat channel. I'll be back with Paranormal Experience next Wednesday. Friday is going to be Shelley Robertson with Ghost Talk with 187 PI. Then Sunday, I'll be back with Fate Radio. That's going to be a great show. You will not want to miss it. I will be coming to you live from Key West with Greg and Noah from Supernatural and Paranormal University. We'll be talking about some new methodologies and techniques, as well as the ins and outs of what's going on in the paranormal research field. Monday will be Denise Pridemore with the Paranormal Pride. And then I'll be back Wednesday. So y'all have a fantastic week. I will be coming to you live Halloween from Key West. We will be doing the Scarefest review show, and my guest will be Willie Gibson, who is a fantastic shaman and just a wonderful man. Y'all have a great week, and we will see you next time. Thank you for being here. Good night.